Go.
Good evening. My name is Jack Cummings. I'm the Artistic Director of Transport Group and the Director of Broadbend Arkansas. Thank you so much to all of you out there joining us. To start off, I'd like to introduce Marcia Pendleton, who has been working with Transport Group for nearly a year and helping us reach a much wider audience than we ever have before. Marcia is the owner of Walk Tall Girl Productions, a marketing, audience development, and group sales company for the arts. Her clients include both Broadway and off-Broadway productions, as well as premier dance and music institutions. Marcia also serves on the board of the Black Theater Network and is responsible for connecting us with them, an incredible organization that, if you are so able, we encourage you to make a donation to in lieu of paying for a ticket to watch Broadbend, Arkansas. Again, we're so grateful to be working with Marcia, and with that, please welcome Marcia Pendleton.
Hi, everybody. I am Marcia Pendleton, and I am the publicity chair for the Black Theater Network. Right now, I would like to introduce you to a dear friend, a wonderful talent, and someone who is going to guide us through this evening. His name is Michael Dinwiddie. He's an associate professor at the Gallatin School at New York University. So welcome, Michael Dinwiddie.
Hi, thank you, Marcia, for that really lovely introduction. I'm excited to welcome the audience tonight on YouTube or wherever you're viewing us from for what promises to be an insightful discussion with a creative team that put this marvelous project together. Hope you've all had a chance to see it. Tony Award-winning actor Chuck Cooper has done a wonderful job of setting up what we're about to see, but he mentioned an organization that you may not be familiar with. So at this time, I would like to introduce the president of the Black Theater Network, Mr. Andre Harrington.
Hello.
Welcome, Andre.
Thank you, Michael, for that introduction. Good afternoon. It's nice to see you.
Good to see you too. It's afternoon in California, isn't it? So
it is afternoon in California, yeah.
Will you and Marcia spend a few minutes describing the Black Theater Week, which is sponsored by Black Theater Network, and
certainly
this coming Monday?
Certainly. A little background. The BTN began in 1986 with our founders coming from HBCUs and the Association of Dramatic and Speech Arts. This group of founders decided to branch out on their own and created an organization that is dedicated and humbled by the work of Black theater artists. We promote scholarship, performance, playwright, direction, any sort of Black theater in the diaspora you can think of, we are a part of that conversation. We help network people together. We have an annual conference, but unfortunately, due to the pandemic, our conference was canceled face-to-face in Detroit. Our vice president, Mr. Chris Berry, is now our conference convening officer, and he has curated with a subcommittee something we are now titling Black Theater Week. This curated week of activities includes performances, paper presentations, a design competition presentation, our Young Scholar Awards, our general town hall meeting with luminaries throughout the country, as well as the field. So I invite you to join us next week. We begin on Monday, July 27th for Black Theater Week. And thank you for your donations to the BTN.
Thanks, Andre. Marcia, is there anything you want to add?
Yes, there's something that I do want to add. If you want to find us, it's Black Theater Network, theater spelled R-E, blacktheaternetwork.org. We have some amazing people coming in. Dominique Morisseau in conversation with Michael Eric Dyson. Tariq Trotter, better known as Black Thought from The Roots, is going to be in conversation with Oscar award-winning screenwriter John Ridley, and they will be talking about their new musical. And two prolific producers who are going to be on Broadway whenever it comes back, Ron Simon and Brian Moreland, maybe there's 5 African-American producers on Broadway. So we're very, very excited, and we hope that everyone will join us. And thank you so very much for partnering with us, Transport Group.
Wow, that
Thank
sounds
you.
like a great week. And Jack, we're so glad that you brought us into the fold. So Andre, I
Yes.
know that you have to go and prepare for Black Theater Week. So thank you for stopping by. Bye.
I appreciate it, Michael. Thank you. And at some point, our taping and tech may be cut short, so I may be able to pop back in if that's okay. Would that be all right?
Come right on back in whenever you
Okay.
want to, okay?
Thank
You'll
you.
be proud.
Have a
And
great evening,
Marcia?
everyone.
Bye.
Marcia, if your computer doesn't zoom you out, I hope you'll stay on since you were instrumental in putting everything together this evening. So let's bring together and bring out our amazing team, okay? First, our amazing actors. In Act 1, the role of Benny was brought to life by Justin Cunningham. You may have seen him on Broadway in King Lear opposite Glinda Jackson, or as Kevin Richardson in Ava DuVernay's When They See Us. He's performed at the Delacorte Theater, on HBO's Succession, and in the Sheen Center production of Little Rock. Justin is a graduate of the Juilliard School and the University of Arkansas, and he is a native Arkansan. Did I say it right, Justin?
Yes,
Okay, I just wanted to
Arkansas.
make sure. Okay, welcome. Act
Thank
2, the role of Ruby came to us through the amazing talents of Miss Danielle Fulton. She has performed Dion in the Second National Tour of Hair, Sarah in Ragtime at the Asalo, Thelma in The Trip to Bountiful, Charlene in Ain't Misbehavin', and Dorothy in The Wiz, both at the Harlem Repertory Theater. Have you ever been to Arkansas, Danielle? Come on, join us.
No,
Okay. The play.
not
So
yet.
thank you. We
Hello.
certainly, you take us there with an incredible performance. We already met Jack Cummings, who is a co-founder and artistic director of the award-winning Transport Group. He's directed so many productions, as well as productions in the regions of the Old Globe and Paper Mill Playhouse. Transport has so many awards. If I listed them, we'd spend the whole night doing it, but the Obie Awards, Drama Desk, Drama League, nominations, Dramatists Guild Awards, and nominations. Welcome again, Jack.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael.
Now our playwrights. Ellen Fitzhugh can't be with us tonight, but she wrote the first act of Broadbend, Arkansas. She's a veteran of the theater. In 1985, she won the Tony Award for Best Original Score and Tony for Best Lyrics for Grind. Wow. She's written numerous other plays and librettos. So she's here with us in spirit. But we do have an Act 2, and that's Harrison Davis Rivers, librettist for the second act of Broadbend, St. Paul-based playwright. His plays have been produced at the National Black Theater, New York Fringe, Williamstown, and Penumbra, among others. Harrison has received fellowships from the McKnight and Jerome Foundations, New Dramatists, New York Theater Workshop, and Duke University, and New Dramatists. Wow, you are busy. Welcome, Harrison.
Thanks so much.
Our composer is Ted Shin. Now, his music is what connects the characters, their stories, and their journeys. After a successful 30 years in business, Ted returned to his music roots in 1999. In 2008, after studying with really interesting and great people, he began writing the book, music, and lyrics for his own musical, A Second Chance, which was presented in concert version at Joe's Pub in 2010, given its world premiere as a fully staged production at Signature Theater, Arlington, Virginia, 2011, and then produced in its New York premiere at the Public Theater in 2014. Broadbend, Arkansas is Ted's second musical. He and his wife, Mary Jo, through the Shin Family Foundation, support the development of new musical works by a select group of exceptionally original composers. In 2005, he established the Shin Curriculum for Musical Theater at Yale, which he is a graduate. Welcome, Ted.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. I'm so glad to see you again. So I should tell you, I have a little history with this show. I'm an Okie from Muskogee, so I'm not from Arkansas, but I did get a chance to attend the production in New York at the Duke Theater, and it was spectacular. The team brought it alive in a seamless, perfectly calibrated production of music, libretto, and the perfect actors for the roles. So forgive me, Jack, for giving you a review, but I just want to say it was perfect, okay? So our formal conversation tonight is going to be about the production, and in the end, we'll leave about 20 minutes for you as the audience members to ask questions from YouTube in the chat. You can send them to the chat, and I'll get to as many as I can. Now, there is one technical note. We're all grateful to Zoom for this time and in this time of COVID. But if someone pops off accidentally, we've got our stage manager, Hannah Oren, to help them navigate and come back on. So don't worry about it if somebody disappears. Okay, so the last I checked, we had more than 800 people sign on to view Broadband, which is pretty remarkable and wonderful. And tonight we have more than 350 people watching. So welcome as you shelter safely and come to the magical place that is the theater of the imagination. So I'm not gonna talk much longer. I just want to say that we're in 1961, the year of the Freedom Riders. America is in turmoil. Does that sound familiar? Black and white allies in the streets challenging the system. But in a town like Broadbend, Arkansas, where traditions infused from another time take precedence, it's hard to hang on to dreams when prejudice and economic subjugation are the reality for people of color. But what makes a person dream anyway? And how do people like Benny find the courage to journey out into a bigger world? Those are the stories that come to us in Broadbend. We learn this from these characters. So I'm gonna go right to you, Benny. I wanna ask you, as you started to, where's Benny? Is Benny there? he's on, okay. It's my camera. I just wanna know, how did you start to find this character? How did it start to shape you? You're in Arkansas, did you know these people? Or did you have to create something totally different?
All right, so sorry. So sorry, I lost connection. I just now came back.
That's gonna happen, so don't worry about it. Did you hear the question?
No, I didn't.
Okay, the question was, I said, did you know these people? How did you find this character? And where did you pull him from? Because, and I'm saying the character, but you actually did 3 characters. So talk about it a little bit, okay?
Well, being from Arkansas and sort of having an idea of like what he was going through. Basically, he's trying to figure out who he is and what he wants to be and where he wants to go. And for me, I mean, I grew up in very rural backwoods Arkansas on a farm. And so for me, the choice to sort of leave this place where I'm at now, like I'm back home now, but to leave this place and find something new is I really related to the character in that way, because I really understood, being from this place, it can be in its own little bubble. And then because of the pandemic and coming back home, I'm able to see people that I grew up with and see not necessarily that these people didn't follow their dreams, but sort of people that became victim to circumstance. And Benny, in a sense, really wanted to not become a victim of his circumstance, which some of it being his color, his social, economic status, and things like that. So I really related to that, and then his dream and his motivation to sort of find something new for himself and for his daughters, and to grow as a person. So for me, I basically did almost the same thing, was just leave this place and find something new and move forward.
And so you did find a way to connect a life. Ruby, you're laughing about it, but you're next. I was going to ask you, you are a real victim of circumstance in every way. You're shaped by outside events and things. Where does this character draw the strength that she has that we see throughout the entire second act?
I was laughing at Justin's move forward joke. But yeah, I think Ruby is one of those people who is strong and doesn't know that she is, and has that innate curiosity and want for more, like her father does, but in not knowing him, wasn't able to grasp that or really identify that or explore that in herself until probably the moment where the most tragic thing that she's been alive for, probably, and she's been a witness of, probably happened.
There's that tender moment at the end of Act 2 where you conjure your father and he comes back to you and you get to talk to him and speak to him. And I just wonder, for you too as actors, you did one act by yourself, another act by yourself, tell me what was magical for you in that and what really brought you forward?
Well,
go ahead.
Okay. For me, just first off, being on stage by yourself in a musical is terrifying. And because it's just this huge weight of responsibility of to
Oh man, we're losing you. So that's it. I'm gonna let Danielle answer now.
I can continue. It's terrifying. I agree. It's pretty scary, and you know, it's isolating. It's isolating, but we were so supported by Transport Group, but it was also the biggest test of trust that an actor. I mean, I know that I would ever have to face on stage, and I was so looking forward to the moment where we spent some time together and in rehearsal. It was just, we were speaking about magic. We were just deciding, like, is this magic? Is he really there? Did she think him up? Did she conjure him? Everyone has all different answers in the room, which makes it so fun and so like powerful. I thought of her as conjuring him up. I thought he was really there. But yeah, it was awesome to have that moment. And to feel the people who are watching it and you back and how they took that all in. You back?
And Michael, I'm sorry. I know you didn't ask me a question.
Oh, you were next.
But I thought I'd just jump right in. I mean, from the very beginning of sort of the crafting of Act 2, we knew that we wanted these characters to share the stage. Mm-hmm. And we didn't actually ever answer that question that Danielle sort of put forward. Is he real? Is he conjured? We never answered, and we let the actors sort of make that decision, but we wanted them to have that moment, whatever it was, whether it was in the imagination or if it was real. We wanted the daughter to connect with her father because she needed that connection in order to move forward. And so like that was always something that we were sort of moving toward, even in the creative process.
It's a lyrical and surprising and shocking moment that we have been waiting for without realizing it because there's no expectation that it will happen. But I want to say that one of the things that makes that happen is the music, the way that Ted created this whole universe and this palette of sound that really envelops this world. So Ted, tell us a little bit about your process and how this project came to be. I know you started working on it in 2015. So.
Well, as for the project, it all started with Paulette Hout, who's a long time, he's founder and head of O'Neill Theater Center, and decided, I guess about maybe 12, 14 years ago to, through her production company, to create something called a musical monologue, in which she would commission a writer to write roughly a 30, 35-minute monologue and then select a composer to set it to music. And in so doing, she'd be enabling writers and composers to work with each other in a very different kind of medium. In fact, it was she was inventing a medium that didn't really exist, musical monologue. Anyway, so with that as background, in 2015, somehow, I don't know how I got the honor, but I was selected to musicalize this beautiful libretto that Ellen Fitzhugh had been commissioned by Paulette to do, called Just One Cue. And I gladly jumped on because I loved the story about the two women, Bertha and Julien, and promptly set about writing the music to a score that to a libretto that was handed to me. It was already done. So no question about which came first, the words or the music. It's the story. All the words came first, which is also true of Harrison's Act 2. And it was in the process of setting Just One Cue to music that somehow through the music, I just felt like I was getting deeper and deeper into the characters whom I loved, but I also became more and more curious about Benny's private life. I mean, how was he bringing up these two kids? How was he dealing with this very loaded time period that Ellen chose and place that she chose, Broadbend, Arkansas in 1961? How did he relate, or to what extent was he aware of the Freedom Riders, who were actually in force and being publicized at the very time that this narrative is going on? And that's what inspired an idea to create a full-length musical by writing a second act that would give us some of the answers to that question by setting it 27 years later and narrated by one of his 3-year-old twins, Ruby, who by then was a single mother of a 15-year-old boy. So I get a chance to learn a lot of things retrospectively about what had happened since 1961. Through the wonderful support of the public theater, we found Harrison. I asked, I really need a incredibly gifted, brilliant writer to bring this scenario that I had developed for Act 2. And they said, oh, Harrison Rivers. And I remember how overjoyed I was when Harrison signed on. And he was then commissioned by the public to write the libretto for Part 2. And after that, we had, the usual. We had a couple of years of workshops and readings and so on to try to finish off Ruby, and then kind of backfill into just one cue to meet Ruby someplace, and then finally to integrate the two, so there'd be a dramatic arc that connected the two. As a composer, I just simply, in each individual case for each show, didn't begin with any preconceived musical language. I didn't have any songs I'd thought up. I just want the music to be in the service of the narrative, always. And so I just wrote music in whatever way I thought it could best serve the narrative. Sometimes in song, sometimes as underscoring, sometimes in just plain silence, that the words be spoken by themselves.
I gotta really, that's really, thank you so much, because a question just came in. I'm going to kind of look back and forth, but it's really interesting. Someone was asking, if you have children, have you had them see Broadbend, Arkansas? There's so much history here. I mean, this is John Lewis's moment. John Lewis is a freedom rider. We just lost C.T. Vivian. We just lost Charles Evers, the brother of Medgar Evers, who was murdered in 1963. So, Jack, I just wonder, when you think about the audiences you had, did you have young people coming to see the show? And if you did, what kind of reactions did you get?
We did. We had one audience I particularly remember. We had a great talk back with them of high schoolers, an entire matinee of high school students. And they, what I was encouraged by, just as an older theater maker, was that they were very connected with it and felt, I think they connected to the social justice issues, of course, I think the generation right now, I think Z is the name, are just hyper aware, I think, maybe in the same way that the young people were like in the late 60s. I think there's a connection there in some way. But I also felt when we were talking with them that they definitely connected with the father-daughter relationship and just the basic human need for wanting a parent that is not there for various reasons. So that was, I think they were kind of connecting to all of it, but I was encouraged to that they connected with that really basic human relationship of it.
Yeah, the intergenerational story is really powerful here with the older ladies who were from the 1930s, the Depression. We're talking about that era. We're talking about the freedom riders, and then we're in the modern moment where young African American males are really in danger by the behaviors that we've seen outside. So Danielle, one of the things that struck me when I'm listening to your character Ruby talk and respond, her relationship with Sam, this idea that Sam was the one who got away, Sam was the one, everybody has that in their family as the favorite child. But I love this impulse and the idea that the father comes back, what the beautiful words that Harrison gave you, in which he says, pushed you out. What is your relationship with Sam? What is it? How do you connect with each other?
I think Ruby actually admires Sam. I think that one moment, Harrison so lovely wrote, when after she's talking about Sam and their experience at school and Ruby wanting to be a mouse in the corner and not seen, and Sam would not do that. And, her annoyance that you are not going behind the wall like I am, and I don't want to be seen, and that makes me uncomfortable. But but I also say I loved that about her.
Mm-hmm.
I admire her in that way. And I love that about my son because I see it in my son as well. And Jack and I would speak in rehearsal about like, where did Sam go? I imagine her to be, he mentioned Angela Davis. I imagine her to be like, you know, a Tamika Mallory right now, like Ayanna Presley or something. Like back then there wasn't social media, they were estranged.
Yes.
So she wouldn't know, you know, if they're not calling each other, have each other's phone number, she wouldn't know what exactly Sam is doing. But I imagine that Ruby believes that she's probably like on government steps somewhere protesting or just being just Sam, her strong, opinionated self. And you know, maybe Ruby moves on to do that, you know, and finds her. But I think ultimately Ruby actually admires her and doesn't know that she does.
Justin, which one is your favorite daughter?
Hey.
Unmute, you got to talk. You're on the spot.
Oh, sorry, I had to switch devices.
Okay. Which one is your favorite daughter?
Well, I think that's a tough question.
Okay, you're not getting on stage again for a while, so you can answer it honestly.
Well, I think that Benny loves them both equally. I think he believes in them both. So.
But you know, you're saying that Harrison didn't because Harrison chose to dramatize Ruby, not Sam. And I just wonder what that was about. Why that character? Was that something that you and Ted discussed, or did it just kind of evolve? What happened there?
Well, you know, when I sat down with Ted to talk about this second act, it was already called Ruby. I mean, a choice had already sort of been made. I will say, though, that it was important, I think, to both of us that Sam be a part of the story, too. Yes. That actually, like, Ruby is not Ruby without Sam. You know, there isn't the one side without the other. And I do think that, like, there is something sort of aspirational about Sam, that, like, in this moment of crisis, Ruby steps into herself, which is Ruby being sort of a Sam, you know, like she has somebody to look to say, how do I do this? Well, Sam knew how to do this. So like in this moment, I'm going to channel a little bit of Sam, which actually is a big part of me. So I'm glad that Sam was in the piece. I think that Sam needs to be in the piece in order for us to better understand Ruby.
Yeah, one of the other things that's amazing about the piece was that Ted's motifs, his different sounds, which created feelings about where we were in which period. I remember the moment where Ruby is talking about Sam talking about her mother being a backup singer for the Supremes, and we hear this sound that is the Motown Ted sound. So it's a very different thing, but we know what we're listening to. Ted, what were some of the inspirations that pulled on you? And I'd say the first act, because the music is really different, and it really changes and becomes a very different sound in the second act. Or to me, I don't know, maybe I'm projecting.
There were three. I generally don't like pastiche in musical theater. You know, that is music that's imitative of something that's been written before. But I have to say, I couldn't avoid it because in three instances, because the music is so intertwined with the narrative, opposed to being separate. You know, first you have dialogue, then you break out in song. In this case, the music and the spoken text just intertwined and went back and forth kind of seamlessly, thanks to the way Ellen and Harrison, you know, constructed their libretti. In any case, so for Gunsmoke, for the reference to Diana Ross, and also for the movie It's a Wonderful Life, I just felt called out for the music of those moments.
You know what's amazing, and what I'm thinking, you're making me realize too, the other instruments. I mean, of course, the six-piece orchestra you had behind the cast was fantastic, but the musicality of the performers, the incredible voices, the range, I mean, it was just really quite remarkable. And so I just want to ask Jack, first of all, how did you find these wonderful people? And then what were the rehearsals like? What was it like to go through this process?
Well, we have a wonderful casting director named Nora Brennan, who I've worked with really almost since the beginning of the company. So a lot goes out to her in terms of, you know, helping us cast all of our shows. Thankfully, I've done a couple of other solo musicals, and they are very, very, very odd, challenging beasts that are so different from anything else. And I always felt a particular admiration for Justin doing his first musical in New York.
Wow.
And having to do it alone. But what's challenging when you cast them is this is all my opinion, by the way. I feel like you need a voice that the audience is going to want to listen to for an extremely long amount of time, and only that voice. There is no relief. So they sort of have to be a recording artist that you just would want to keep buying their albums and listening to them over and over again. Then on top of it, you also have the acting requirements, which in both cases was extremely difficult. Justin's in particular in having to inhabit the very odd lives of two very odd white women. And so, you know, so it was just asking really to find people who could, you know, attain the sun, the moon, and the stars, to put it mildly. And thankfully, both Danielle and Justin walked in the door.
And you know what's funny, in thinking about it too, honestly, at the end of the play, I felt like they were related to each other. You know, I really had the sense that there was a connection. I was reading something. I know, Jack, you don't read reviews or anything like that. One of them was talking about how these two acts were so different, and yet you had this real sense of connection between these people. Now, that's the music, that's the script, that's all those elements, but also the human connection that we did get to see at the end when we see the two of them come together. So was the public theater involved in this production as well, Jack?
Yes, they were. Mandy Hackett, who is the artistic producer, I believe, over at the Public, that is her title. She had shepherded the piece before I came on board, and obviously had found Harrison and brought he and Ted together, but also during our process served as the dramaturg. So she worked in close contact with Harrison, Ellen, Ted, and I, and there was quite a lot of rewriting and as well as new material that was especially for this production. The main example that would be Benny's when he leaves the nursing home and sets out to follow the Freedom Riders. That entire section was brand new for our production, and it was in order to connect the two pieces. It was we called it the bridge piece. It was bridging one piece into the next, and so it's kind of an unofficial act 2 with Ruby being an unofficial act 3.
Oh, so I saw a 3-act play. Okay, I didn't realize that.
Sort of in my mind.
Well, that's fantastic. I just want to say that it was a brilliant use of that moment in the history, and incredible in terms of bridging, and especially with what's going on right now in the culture. I mean, this, you know, your guys are really prophetic in terms of nailing this thing. The other thing that was phenomenal about this for me and watching it was the videography. It was really beautiful. I mean, you know, I'm used to seeing productions that are filmed in a very documentary style. I know that Joe Licaro worked on. Can you tell us how you found him, how he came to the production?
Yeah, Joe has a long history of being a really beautiful filmmaker and videographer, and I know him because he is actually married to our casting director, Nora Brennan.
Oh, okay, good.
And Joe has an interesting background because he's a former actor, he's a former ballet dancer, and has done many Broadway shows. And so he comes with a specific understanding, I feel, of the stage in particular and how to capture it on film. And we're really grateful to him for documenting the show in this way.
Well, that explains how he was able to really, then he flowed in and out of the characters. You know, there's a moment where we look at the chair, we're talking the chair, but then he's in it, and then he's swallowing the cue and all these things. I hope that's a spoiler for anybody who hasn't seen it yet. And I watched that, and you're right. You can see the balletic movement of it. You can feel it in the music, you can see it in the words and all that, but the whole production really has this kind of really beautiful, beautiful quality. The sound, the music, the lights. Now, here's my fun question for you, and you guys all get to answer this one. So, let's say we're gonna go continue the story today. Where would it go? What would happen if we were gonna go to you said there are 3 acts, so we're going to a 4th act. Where do you think it should go? Let's let the playwright go last. Let's have the final word. And let's let Ted start us off, and then we'll get Danielle, and then Justin, and then the playwright. Let's see. And then the director.
Oh, I don't want to steal anyone's thunder. I really would love to hear what the people who are the closest end of the story have to say about that. So I'm going to defer for now. Thank you.
Okay, you're allowed. Okay, Danielle.
Yeah, speaking about Sam and being that strong pillar, I feel like Ruby would go on. I think of someone like Sabrina Fulton. I wonder if she goes on and she becomes an advocate and an activist in Broadbend. I wonder. I think she may go on a pursuit because she's in that cemetery unraveling, but unraveling positively, just figuring out more of who she is, all the things that she's pushed away for so long out of survival, really, and just coming to that realization of who she really is, and then having that, visit from her father. I mean, I just imagine that it's just a 180, and I just see her possibly being a voice for her son.
I was going to say
probably,
sure.
yeah, probably, of course, like, she's going to stand up for her son, but also it may just spread itself out to the community, to Broadbend, or that Black town that she talks about that she was kind of admiring, So yeah.
Well, I think you're right, because I was born in 1954, so I'm 65. And the next year, this little boy named Emmett Till was murdered in Mississippi. And my parents decided they were going to move away from Oklahoma in that time, in that period, because of that. So I think of taking care and protecting children is a really key aspect of what we're seeing in the movement today. And what we're getting to see is that children are willing to protect themselves as well. I think that's a really powerful thing. So Justin, tell me where we're going to go with this play so that Harrison can do.
I feel like at the end of this play, I mean, she's singing moving forward, like I'm going to move forward and go back, and we're going to start different. We're going to do something new. And Harrison, wrote that song so beautifully, and I feel like what's happening now in our society, in our culture, is a massive sort of I don't know if it's faux or not. I don't know if I can get behind it and believe that it's real, that people are like really standing. I believe it's kind of like what Baldwin was saying, way back when, that it's going to take a national collective of all of us to start recognizing who we are, what we've done, and where we need to go. And I think that moving forward I think that's where we're at now. I think that we're nationally recognizing that we need to address what's happening with us, and we're all trying to find ways to move forward, whether it be painting Black Lives Matter on the street, or the Washington Redskins taking their logo off, and like there's all these different things that are happening. But at this point now, I think where the play ends is where Ruby ended up. Like, I need to do something, and this is the time. It's right now. Yeah.
Harrison?
Well, we really tapped into this intergenerational idea in this musical. And I feel like the generation that has not yet gotten to sing is Ben. And I do wonder what happens with Ben when his mother advocates for him, what happens with Ben as a result of what he has experienced. So I don't know. I don't know that like it's been in 2020, but I do wonder if Ben stays in Broadbend or if Ben leaves. And if Ben leaves, what does Ben do as a result of this happening in Broadbend? I mean, I think that's like, I'm interested in that. I mean, I'm interested actually in like everything that Danielle and Justin also said, but like I I feel like there's something to seeing that direct lineage of realization and activism, and like what effect does that have directly on that generation right after you. And I would love to hear Ben sing about that.
That's pretty powerful and remarkable, because all of a sudden you've got a whole different sound palette. It's got a whole different notion of what the music will be in the 90s and 2020 and 2010 and stuff like that. So Ted, are you ready for that? Or is that something you're
I'd love to dive in.
okay? Well, so Jack, now you've got your next challenge here. I'm putting it together for you. I should also tell you that this is Harrison is a member of the Drama Guild, so any ideas you present become his.
Exactly.
So Jack, I'd like you to just talk a bit about you've talked about doing these kinds of musicals before, just small chamber musicals. What were the challenges for you that were unique to this one? And then you also talked about shedding some of it. I'd like to hear about some of the things that you said. This needs to, even it may be beautiful, but it has to go away.
This process was, it was fascinating for me personally. Danielle and Justin know that I must have asked them 10,000 questions every hour of what it is to be Black in this country. And when Harrison was in the room, I'd ask him as many questions. And so it was very trying to understand all of that and then bring it into the production from, what I bring to it as a director, was very challenging, but very gratifying. And I'll always be grateful to everyone who was in that room who really helped shepherd it. I think for the challenge was because both pieces are very operatic.
Yes.
And in ways, and so like trying to make sure that the largeness of the world that they were up against was always present, and yet keeping it so small and human and focused on these very, very human moments, and trying to like almost put them under like a tender microscope, so that our hearts would just connect with them in every possible way that they could. And so I think what in the set was basically it wasn't a bare stage, but it was bare in that except for the chairs.
Yeah.
In Act 1 there was nothing. And so to me that then requires it was such hard work on Danielle and Justin's part, who did the bulk of it, just getting as specific as possible within every single breath and gesture and movement. There was almost no margin for error, so that it would just looked as organic as possible. But that it was really the in terms of the rehearsals, it was the two of them that really carried us all forward, to use a word that we're using a lot. And so it really, in the end, it just became about them. My whole job was, how do I put the audience's focus squarely on their faces and in their hearts?
And we got that. We really did as an audience. I mean, it was really quite a powerful evening. I got a question here that's really directed to Ted, and it's asking, had the Black Lives Matters movement begun when you started writing this? And did its emergence have any effect on the work for you and Harrison?
Actually, I'm not sure when you really want to, what you want to consider as the origin of the Black Lives Matter movement. But when I had the idea of adding the second act back in the spring of 2016, before we'd even finished Just One Q, I was still working on that score.
Oh, and Just One Q was the name of the one act.
I'm sorry, yeah. So the one actor that we were commissioned for in 2015 to be produced in October 2016 was called Just One Q. And as Jack described, it was Act 1 up until the time Bertha swallows the tile, and that was the end. So anyway, while I was writing that music, one of the I'd say, strongest impulses that led me to want to write a second act wasn't just curiosity about the characters. It was the aftermath of Eric Gardner and Trayvon Martin, which was very, very fresh at that time. And in fact, in my proposal to Oscar and Mandy, I felt that what we really wanted Act Two to do was explore the collateral damage to family structures from racially targeted police killings.
Oscar and Mandy at the Public Theater, correct? That's what you're saying.
Well, I proposed it to the Public Theater because I needed their help to find
Right.
a real writer, not me. And so they're the ones who found Harrison. And
It was really a blessing, wasn't it?
I'm just saying the initial impulse wasn't specifically what we think of now as the Black Lives Matter movement. However, the foundation for that movement and the very specifics of, as I say, Eric Gardner and Trayvon Martin, who were murdered back to back. I mean, it was like such a short period of time that would just, it just had a huge impact on, so many people. And that was the motivation, one of the most important motivations for Act Two.
Harrison, did you want to add anything?
No, I think Ted said it very well. Maybe the only thing I would say is that something that feels that it's in the DNA of this piece is this idea of being heard, of like sort of finding and stepping into yourself and allowing yourself the agency to stand up and speak out. I think both Benny and Ruby do that in the context of this show, and that feels very relevant to now. It feels relevant to 5 years ago. It feels relevant to, and I think we can just keep going back about this idea of stepping into agency and speaking out and speaking up. And so I think that that's always been a part of the piece. Whether that's exactly the moment that we are speaking to, or that's just sort of in the fiber and the fabric of the narrative.
Well, it's so interesting. I saw the show, as I said, and when we got ready to do this, I came on with Hannah and Maggie and Diane, and I was asking them, they said, well, there are 30 people involved, and I was like, what? The show is going to be 30 people now? And of course, they're talking about the production crew and all this. I thought they were going to do like this huge thing. And the reason I asked it as a person, asked the question, was this always going to be a two-person show? Was it always thought that was it always the conception? I can ask Jack that, and then I guess our creative team.
Yeah, I mean, it came to me as a two-person musical, but from what I understand, Ted, that's how you as the ultimate with Ellen conceiver of it.
Okay. All right. Any other comment? Any ideas, Harrison? Well, actually, Justin has 3 characters. So,
yes, that's
no, I mean, it's a two-person, but he has 3 roles. And I want to say again, the way he drew the difference between Julin and I want to say Bertha, I said the right name? Yeah, I mean, it was really remarkable and powerful and painful because he was at their mercy. That was really a difficult thing for me to kind of watch and understand that. And that's the truth of that period, that time, and what life was like for many, many people of that time. So we're drawing near to the end of our time. And I want to make sure that I get all the questions. Let me make sure there are no questions that I've missed here. Someone was asking in the whole process, what was it like to work together as a team? And what were the times where you were like, this is not gonna come together? I'll start with you, Justin. It's your first musical in New York. That's pretty stunning.
It was it was my first musical in New York. I mean, I've done musicals before at Arkansas, but this was like my first professional one to actually get paid for. But for me, the process was, again, before I was cut off earlier because I had switched devices. It was like taking on a huge responsibility because you have to sort of keep the story buoyant and to float to the very end, and then every sort of curve that you have to take is taken by you. And so, and when I'm playing 3 different characters, I have to have the 3 separate sort of mindsets and then have to switch between each one of them and And if something doesn't make sense to me, then I have the responsibility to change my action from that other character for myself.
Right.
So like it was extremely exhilarating to like try to do basically 3 different things at the same time. I mean, there were parts where I didn't know if I could do it because it was such a workshopping type process, and we're still, getting new lines and rewrites like in previews and things like that. And so trying to incorporate those types of things in the last second were very difficult for me. But all in all, it was a really great experience, and it just took a lot of responsibility. Yeah.
Focus. Well, I was at one rehearsal, I remember, or run through that you invited me to, which Marcia had arranged. And I just remember the room was very interesting because it was like, is it gonna come together or is it not? That was like the feeling, And so the levels of kind of energy and emotion that you and Danielle had to put forth every performance really, really called on everything you would have as an artist. I just want to, commend my playwright and my composer for giving you the space in that work to really create really amazing and beautiful characters. I mean, that was just really part. And of course, Jack, you play a part. But
No.
Well, Michael, I just want to say, sorry, Danielle, why don't you
go ahead.
Oh, well, I was going to say that something that I really valued was that a lot of this process was a conversation. I do feel like Danielle helped shape Ruby. I mean, there are parts of Ruby that feel very much influenced by Danielle, and I was so grateful to have a partner in the creation of the character that I can bring a certain amount of the table, but it does take, an actor, it takes a composer, it takes a team really to find your way to a character who lives and breathes and feels, and I assume that like there was a lot of that with Justin and Ellen and Ted as well, that there's this conversation about what's working, what's not, what feels good, what doesn't quite hit the mark, and like what can we do to really give that a fullness. And I feel like this process, at least for me, like it felt like that was a priority, is getting to a place of fullness. And I really appreciated that.
Yeah, no, it definitely was a collaborative room. And in a room where the truth is sometimes you're the only Black person there. And, by circumstance as well, because Harrison didn't live here, so we try to get him in as much as we could, and in those rooms, oftentimes the Black voice isn't valued in the ways that it should be. Right. It's suppressed. People may be scared. But I was in a room where I was able to speak up and to people who wanted to hear. And I told Jack, I joke and I say, I'm not in the business of giving out cookies to people, but if there were any room, that as a Black woman, my voice, if any Black woman asked me how that experience was and how safe I felt to speak up, I did feel safe. And talking about the integration of the story, what drew me to, and I had my little snippet when I did the audition and a little callback. Callback was longer, but what drew me to it was just Harris's nuance and poetry is just, I'm just honored to have spoken your words. Thank you, but I'm so honored to have spoken to your words, and I connected to it from the audition, from the first audition. And what drew me to it was the topic on whiteness and white saviorhood and challenging what that is. And watching it again and integrating when we integrated the show, I understood that Just One Q didn't have a Black person in it. So when you bring a Black person in, it becomes a Black story. So how do we integrate it all in together so that it can be seamless, but also relate and realistic and can say something? And the collaboration in that room was just awesome to do that. And watching it again, I just see the relation so much. I commend Justin for, like, my God, like your first musical, like, and all the work you know, script changes and line changes, and like I commend you so much, you know, and but you know, watching it again, it's just seeing this suffocation in whiteness, and what does that feel like? What happens when someone is displaced? And looking at what's happening in the world right now, Black folk like Ruby, like Benny, when he had those moments, just seconds, just to change the channel and see something that he related to. Like now, we're trying to climb out of that, and I see Ruby and Benny as first examples of what that is. So I'm just honored to have been a part of that kind of story, and I'm just happy to be a part of it.
Well, I have one last comment here, and it's that someone wrote in and said, this is precisely what we mean when we say that theater making is a collaborative process and informed by the history in its many dimensions. And if you can say anything about Broadbend, Arkansas, covering everything from pre-civil rights consciousness to the raising of it, the coming together in a way that's amazing of people becoming allies who never thought they would be to each other, and then the way it reverberates in our culture today, we're really in an amazing moment. And I just want to say this show was prophetic. It was really quite beautiful. And so I just want to thank everyone. I want to thank the amazing actors, the stars of Broadbend, Arkansas, Miss Danielle Fulton and Mr. Justin Cunningham. Act 2, librettist Harrison David Rivers. Is it David or Davis?
It's David.
Thank you, I got it right.
With a D, yeah.
Okay, good, okay. I got scared for a minute. I wanted, because you gotta get the playwright's name right. Harrison David Rivers, composer Ted Shin, director Jack Cummings, and to my colleagues from the Black Theater Network, Andre Harrington and Marcia Pendleton, thank you for the amazing work you do to keep alive the traditions of the theater of the African diaspora. And a special thank you to the Transport Group for generously supporting the Black Theater Network through the broadcast of Broadbend, Arkansas. And audience, thank you for staying with us. Thank you for making this a very special evening for all of us. Thank you for joining us. Good night.
Good night.